Welcome to the final Luminaries in Law podcast session at Seattle University School of Law. This is Tony Verona, the Dean at Seattle U Law, and it is my honor and pleasure to welcome you to a very special taping of our final podcast of the year with ABA President Mary Smith. We are delighted that you all have joined us this evening for this very special dinner and this podcast taping. As part of our dinner, we thought that we would host this final episode of the Seattle U Law Luminaries in Law podcast for the 2023-24 academic year. The Luminaries podcast has brought some of the most prominent leaders in the legal profession to our law school. This evening, we welcome no less than Mary Smith, the president of the largest association of lawyers and law students in the world. Mary is a trailblazer. She is the first Native American to serve in the role of president of the ABA. She is an independent board member and former CEO of a $6 billion national healthcare organization, the Indian Health Service. She currently serves on the board of PTC Therapeutics, a global biopharmaceutical company, and on the board of HAI Group, a leading member-owned insurance company for the affordable housing industry. She also is vice chair of the Veng Group, a national consulting firm. Mary served on the senior team of the Civil Division at the United States Department of Justice and was general counsel of the Illinois Department of Insurance. Earlier in her career, she served in the White House as associate counsel to the president and associate director of policy planning. Mary has long been a bar leader. She is past ABA secretary. She was the first Native American to serve as one of 13 commissioners on the Commission on Women in the Profession. She has held leadership positions in both the ABA section of litigation and the ABA section of civil rights and social justice. She also served as an ABA representative to the United Nations Economic and Social Council. Mary also has served in leadership roles in state and local bars. She served on the executive council of the National Conference of Bar Presidents and is a past president of the National Native American Bar Association. She was co-chair of the litigation section in the District of Columbia Bar Association and also served on the board of directors of the Chicago Bar Association. In her civic activities, Mary is a member of the Council on Foreign Relations, the Economic Club of Chicago, the International Women's Forum, and the National Association of Corporate Directors. She founded and serves as president and chair of the foundation, named after her mother and grandmother, respectively, the Caroline and Ora Smith Foundation, to train Native American girls in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, STEM subjects. For her exceptional work, Mary has won many awards and richly deserved accolades. Mary graduated from the University of Chicago School of Law, cum laude, and received a BS in mathematics and computer science, magna cum laude, from Loyola University Chicago. She served on the law review and clerked for the Honorable R. Lanier Anderson III in the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals. Joining me this evening as a co-interviewer of President Smith is Professor Nazun Menka, currently on the faculty at the University of California, Berkeley Law School, where she serves as executive director of the Center for Indigenous Law and Justice. We are thrilled that on July 1st, Professor Menka will be joining our tenure-track faculty here at Seattle University School of Law as Assistant Professor of Law and Executive Director of our Center for Indian Law and Policy.
Faculty Director.
Faculty Director, thank you. Nazun and I will have a conversation with Mary for about half an hour, and then we will welcome questions from all of you. Mary, first of all, welcome. Thank you for joining us. You honor us with your presence, and we are just thrilled that you will be serving as our commencement speaker and honorary degree recipient tomorrow. So tell us, what has surprised you so far about your service as president of the American Bar Association?
Well, thank you, Dean, for having me. Really wonderful to be here. Well, I think maybe it's not surprising, but what is surprising is how many incredible people are lawyers and involved in the practice of law. Because you hear, if you watch the news every day, you can get depressed, and lawyers have a bad name, and there have been a few recently who have, and you might think, oh, why do we do this? But I go around and see just incredible people who are doing amazing work. I've been visiting law schools like the University of Seattle. I always enjoy speaking to students. I just spoke to a student a few minutes ago, and he's talking about his career, and it's just exciting because they have their whole career ahead of them.
As president of the largest bar association in the world's oldest democracy, Mary, you have a very special perspective on lawyers and lawyering and the rule of law, and how we're doing as a profession. What can you tell us about the state of lawyers and lawyering and the rule of law today?
Well, when I was starting my term as president, I was thinking about what should we focus on. And the ABA has a long history of focusing, I think, not only on the most important legal issues of our time, but the most important issues of our time. And to me, the most important issue of our time is the threats to our democracy. And the facts are very sobering. Like, only a third of millennials think it's essential to live in a democracy. We recently did a study at the ABA, our civic literacy survey, and 74% of people think that our democracy is weaker today than it was 5 years ago. We also asked people, who do you think is responsible for democracy? And only 1 in 5 people thought that our elected officials are responsible for democracy. So you can get depressed about that if you're a pessimist and think, oh my gosh, we elect these people, that is part of our democracy, but actually I try to look at it in a positive light, because 37% of people said all of us are responsible for democracy, and I think that's the right answer. So based on all of that, I created a task force for American democracy, and I'm thrilled that former Secretary of Homeland Security Jeh Johnson and former federal judge J. Michael Luttig, who you may remember testified at the January 6th hearings, have agreed to be co-chairs. So we are working on white papers. We've been doing listening sessions around the country. We've done 3 so far in Georgia, Michigan, and Pennsylvania. We had a very special Law Day 1 at the National Constitution Center in Pennsylvania, and our next one's in Madison, Wisconsin on July 9th. But the listening sessions are not meant to be just a one day and done. It's to mobilize the community and set up follow-up committees in those places to work through the election and after the election on issues in that community. So it's very exciting, and they're working. They have a lot of white papers that they've written that are on the ABA website on disinformation and other topics. So it's been very rewarding work, very necessary work, and I think lawyers, as lawyers, we're the keepers of democracy, because all of us, the day we become a lawyer, we take an oath to uphold the Constitution and the rule of law, and it's our duty to do so.
Mary, you mentioned disinformation and the contested nature of the concept or the understanding of democracy. Why do you think that we are facing that challenge? Is it social media? Is it the balkanization of the media substrate in which we find ourselves? Are there other reasons for this problem?
Well, I think that the internet and social media exacerbate it, but I don't think that's the cause of the problem. I think we live in a society where, it's interesting, because I got asked a question by someone just a day or two ago, and they said, oh, do you think the threats to American democracy are coming from outside the U.S. or inside the U.S.? And I said, I think both. And there's people who want to create distrust in our institutions of government, in our courts, and social media is a way to do that, and through other means, and so we're living in a time like that, and that's why it's even more important for all of us as lawyers to step up, whether that's teaching civics in high school or grade school, or working as a poll worker at elections, or talking to people, writing articles, speaking at your local community groups.
That makes sense.
I'd certainly echo all of the sentiments that you're sharing. There's a lot of work, and certainly our democracy relies on all of us to be engaged and participate in our governments, right? And I think, the work that you've been doing as ABA president, right, in your past presidency of the National Native American Bar Association, I was thinking about all of the incredible work that you do, and I was curious about what you think, informs your values, right? Or what values are integral to your leadership? And I think also, more specifically, how does your Indigenous identity as a citizen of the Cherokee Nation inform those values?
Yeah, I think one of the main values that I have and I value myself is building trust, because everything you do is really about relationships, and if you don't have trust in relationships, you can't really do anything. And I know it's kind of interesting, because when I was head of the Indian Health Service, I went to visit some tribes in California, and I had just met them, and they handed me this little stone, and it said the word trust on it. And so I keep that by my computer, and because I find that sometimes you have to have hard conversations with people, and I know myself, and it has worked for me so far, is that if you're at least honest with people, you can have those conversations. I know when I was head of the Indian Health Service, I had flown out to Rapid City, South Dakota to attend a conference, and I got a call that all the tribal leaders in the Great Plains had just had a meeting, and they were seeking financial information from the Indian Health Service, and I had told my staff they'd been working on it for 6 weeks, and I had actually sent some people out to the Great Plains to look at the financial statements and the books, but things were so in disarray that after even 6 weeks, it still wasn't in a place where they could present it in a good way to the tribal leaders. So I guess a tribal leader asked one of my staff and didn't like the answer. So they had a meeting, all the tribal leaders, and I think there were like 21 tribal leaders in the Great Plains, and all of them except one voted to call for my resignation. And so I decided that I would meet with them. So I met with them the next day, and without my staff. I went in there by myself, and I told them that I would be upset if I were them too. I understand why they were upset. But then I told them that we had been working on it, and we will continue working on it. I told them why we couldn't give them the information, and I think we were able to move past that. But yeah, it was.
Mary, may I ask you this question about, in going through your bio, I noticed that you've been the first here and the first there, and trailblazing everywhere you go. What does it mean to you to be the first, to be somebody that so many people in the country and in the world really look to as a breakthrough leader? What does that mean to you? What does that special responsibility feel like to you, and how do you navigate that particular challenge?
Well, I mean, it's an honor, and I hope it gives people hope that if you want to do something, if you want to follow your passion, if you want to follow your dreams, anything's possible. But you will run up against obstacles. Like even when I ran for president of the American Bar Association, we know in the legal profession, and even now, I think 80% of the legal
Right.
profession is like white males. And people said to me, some of them to my face, that I didn't look like an ABA president. And but I did prevail, and so when I speak to young students, I tell them that story, and I tell them that, you know, I look exactly like what an ABA president should look like, and so do all of them.
Bravo, absolutely. So you launched two major initiatives, at least, as ABA president. One on American democracy, which we talked a little bit about, and another one on artificial intelligence, which is being talked about in so many different contexts and in so many different ways. What does your artificial intelligence initiative look like, and what is the role of the ABA in taking a deep dive into that topic?
Well, that also, I think, is one of the major issues of our time, and the legal issues, at least in the United States and probably most of the world, aren't really worked out because new issues are arising. Like even this morning, I read a news article about some voice actors who artificial intelligence has duplicated their voices, and it's being used now, and do they have a right to their voice? So new issues are arising all the time, and I think the ABA is uniquely positioned to look at this because we look at all different areas of the law. So the Task Force for Law and Artificial Intelligence is taking a comprehensive look at artificial intelligence, and they have 7 working groups, including the practice of law, law and like intellectual property, AI in the courts, and then access to justice. So, and ethics. So they've been spending a year working on that, and they're actually coming out with a book at the end of July.
Oh,
so,
fantastic.
Yeah.
Good. Kizu?
Well, so you actually already touched a little bit on this topic, but I think, you know, as an Indigenous person myself, one of the most impressive things about your experience and the tremendous accomplishments that you've had is, right, this position of running the Indian Health Service, right? Serving as the CEO for Indian Health Service, which, as Dean Verona mentioned, is a $6 billion, you know, governmental healthcare institution. And many of us, members of the Native community, are also very aware that the Indian Health Service has historically been chronically underfunded since its inception. And I think, you know, what's really wonderful about this is that despite all of these issues, and some of which you just shared, right, needing to build trust with the community and having open communication, but I think that the National Congress of American Indians recognized your leadership of the IHS as worthy of receiving an award, right, from NCAI. And I think that that's something that should continue to be celebrated, because that's a very, very difficult achievement to accomplish. And so if there are any other lessons that you could share about leadership and how to be successful, especially when you are facing, you know, such challenges, right, such financial challenges.
Yeah, no, I took it, well, it was kind of unusual that I ended up even in that position because I don't have a medical background. Obviously, I'm a lawyer, and the reason I took that position is I get my Native American heritage from my grandmother, Orme Palone, and she grew up in a little town, Westville, Oklahoma, which is on the Oklahoma-Arkansas border, and I didn't realize that till I visited there while I was head of the Indian Health Service, but it was actually one of the ends of one of the tenets of the Trail of Tears. Like, some people think there was only one Trail of Tears, there were many of them, and not just the Cherokees. And my grandmother grew up in a family of 16 kids, only 10 of whom lived above the age of 3 because of lack of health care. And so when I actually got a call from the Secretary's office at the Department of Health and Human Services asking if I'd be interested in that. And probably not the thing to do when you get a call like that, but I blurted out and I said, I'm a lawyer, not a doctor, right? And they're like, yes, yes, yes. And I had to really think about it, so I talked to a few tribal leaders to see if I was the right person, because it's a big job and it has a lot of responsibility. And I thought that I could make a difference. And I do think, obviously I had to rely on the medical professionals on the staff, because that's not my background, but I think my legal background did come in handy to deal with a lot of issues there. And it's always a challenge, and I woke up every day thinking about the patients. I went to sleep every night thinking about the patients. And I think we did some good, but it's it's still very much underfunded, and there's still so much more that needs to be done.
Mary, as you know, Seattle University School of Law will be hosting the 2024 Dean's Workshop for the American Bar Association, the ABA Dean's Workshop this summer in July, and we expect most of the ABA accredited law school deans to join us here for 4 days of conference. So what is your advice to law school deans today? What should we be doing better, more of, or less of?
No, you asked me this question, and I could picture law school deans saying, yeah, we don't need your advice.
Many of us are
But the one thing I guess I'll say is what we've been, and I would love to hear both of your perspectives, is with the Task Force for American Democracy, we always hear that you're not teaching civics in grade schools or high school as much anymore. But I think one of the things we've seen and we've heard during these listening sessions is that people even are in law school and they don't know much about civics. And frankly, the curriculum at law schools doesn't actually cover that. I mean, people take constitutional law, but that's not really civics. And so we actually, Dean Heather Gerken, who's a member of the task force, is circulating a letter to get law school deans to support civics in law school. So that would be, I guess, one thing that I would say to law school deans.
I would love to sign the letter. And as an administrative law professor, my ears are delighting at what you're saying about public law and teaching our students those basics. Did you have another question, Sue?
Well, I was just thinking about her returning the question to us. And so I thought maybe I would love to hear what your thoughts are to your own question.
Well, no, I very much agree with Mary. And yes, as an administrative law and public law, legislation and regulatory state professor, I haven't taught those subjects in a bit, but I completely agree that law schools have to do a better job of educating all of our students on those public law basics. So yes indeed.
I don't know that I necessarily have an answer to that because I feel like I'm very junior in this particular forum. However, that being said, I certainly think that there's a couple of different ways that I view the work that we do in our educational fields, and especially in the legal field. At Berkeley, I've had the honor of teaching undergraduates in legal studies in the clinic program for the Environmental Law Clinic and a doctrinal course with my Indigenous Peoples Law class. And I think that all of those different spaces provided opportunities to really connect to community in ways that were unique to each of those settings. And I think the clinic was especially near and dear to my heart because of the fact that I was able to serve a California Native Nation pro bono. And so I think being of service to the community is really crucial, but also having, being a thought leader for our undergraduates and curating courses that are new and different and covering all of these topics, right? Whether those are civics, or ethical responsibilities, whether it's how to serve as, change makers and leaders in the future, right, through healing and reconciliation measures. I think there's lots of work that we can do, and I've been trying to do my small part in that, and so I will just add that.
That's great. Mary, you'll be speaking to our graduates tomorrow and to their family members and their loved ones, several thousand of our guests. But we will be sharing the video of this conversation with our incoming 1Ls soon. What advice do you have for students who are just starting out, rather than students or soon-to-be graduates tomorrow that are leaving us? What advice do you have for students that are just joining us in law school and entering the legal profession within months? What should they know?
Well, I think they should enjoy it and try to take as many different kind of courses as you can, because you might have entered law school thinking, I'm going to do X. And if you keep your blinders on and only focus on that, you might not have other opportunities. I know my career, I think the only reason I was able to do all the different things is I kept myself open to opportunities when they're presented. And the other thing, if I could go back and do, is just realize that the people you meet will be in your life for your life. My first summer of law school, I interned for a federal judge in Chicago, and we still stay friends today. And the other thing too is to seek out mentors and recognize that a mentor-mentee relationship is actually not just one-sided, it's mutual. And ask people for help, ask people about their experiences, and just try to enjoy it.
Great advice, great advice.